Why is it important for Americans to understand the spectrum of Pakistan's political parties?
I think there's two main reasons I would say that it's important for Western audiences to sort of pay attention to the political party dynamics in Pakistan. One reason is that Pakistan is a very young democracy, a very sort of fragile, emerging democracy in many ways. In 2013 was a very pivotal turning point where it's the first time that a civilian elected administration had completed its full term and handed it off to another civilian elected administration. The first time in Pakistan's history, over 60 years. And so we find that Pakistan is also, as all of us, as many of us know, is also the site of, with the war in Afghanistan is on its borders. It's in a very geopolitical, it's very strategic where it's located. We've had, it has nuclear weapons. It has a very large army. And so I think in a lot of ways, Pakistan, for sometimes not the greatest reasons, have been brought to attention of Western audiences. But I think it's important because Pakistan has what I think of as a large youth bulge, or some people call it the youth wedge. And 60% of the population is under the age of 30. And so in 15 years, Pakistan will be the fourth most populous country in the world. And so for a lot of reasons, that is what makes it so important, that it has this huge population of young people. And unfortunately, 2/3 of the population lives under $2 a day. And so, in terms of providing opportunities, a lot of the Western community is helping Pakistan build partnerships for private equity and civilian assistance and really help build their institutions and education. But I think what's important for Western audiences is how can Pakistan, as it entered the 21st century, in a lot of ways work with, with all these young people that are getting pulled in different directions. And how can we make sure that they're not being led in a very different direction, where there are these small extremist groups, but that are recruiting every day in and day out. As some may remember, there was a Faisal Shahzad incident at the New York Times. The New York Times sort of failed bomber a few years back, and now he was training in Pakistan. So it's many youth there that are getting pulled in different directions that need to be provided alternative pathways. And I think it's important for the international community to be engaged in Pakistan, as it is this young democracy, and it holds so much promise for peace in the region.
What are the key characteristics that differentiate these parties?
I think that there's a few important sort of characteristics that help disentangle political parties in Pakistan. One of my main motivations for writing this is that I think a lot of people, when they see the Muslim world, they see it in a very binary way. They see either Islamist parties or they see secular parties. And it's sort of, very black and white. And part of my research and others that have done research is try to unpack that and say that, well, it's not necessarily just Islamist parties and secular parties. There's a little bit more nuance, a little bit more sophistication. And it's the same way we think about U.S. politics, that it's not just Democrats and Republicans. You have parts of the Republican Party with the Tea Party, you have parts of the Democratic Party, you have third parties, you have independents. It's a much more rich and varied sort of political situation. And that's what I was trying to bring to Pakistan. The interesting thing about Pakistan was the following. You have up to 6 different political parties that all claim to be religious and Islamic parties competing with each other. And for me, that was fascinating because if you're a voter, how do you pick between one of those 6 parties? What makes one party more quote unquote Islamic or religious than another party? How does it burnish its credentials? And so that was part of my idea of developing what I call a Sharia secular continuum. And this was, I thought, an easy matrix to understand a party in terms of their party mandate, what views they take on large policy issues, and where they fall along this spectrum. And that helps sort of us to understand the party in terms of how the party is being strategic. And one thing that I really wanted to get across in the book manuscript was that these political parties want to win elections. They want to influence elections. And so oftentimes they're very strategic. They're pragmatic. And a lot of times we may think of them as deeply rooted in ideological pivots, but they actually move along this Sharia secular continuum based on how many voters they can enlarge and what the election is coming up. How can they form a coalition that will better position them whether it's provincial government or federal government. And so that was the idea I wanted to get across, is that these parties are strategic actors, and they, like any other parties, want to win elections. They want to increase their base, and so that you can interpret a lot of their movement along this continuum.
How do you think the currently elected officials will influence Pakistan as an international actor?
I think Pakistan had a very historic elections, very positive elections in 2013, very pivotal. And as I mentioned, it was a first transfer of power between a civilian elected government that had completed its term and handing it off to another civilian government. And what makes it interesting is that you had the highest number of people to turn out in Pakistan in these elections. I myself was there for those elections as an election observer, and it was so heartening to see so many women and children and young people that had never voted before coming out to voting booths. We saw lines stretching on down the streets in small villages, in urban areas, and so it was exciting to see the kind of exuberance and dynamic sort of mobilization of voters in Pakistan. And what it led to, I think, is also fascinating. You had the Pakistan Muslim League led by Nawaz Sharif, win the majority of seats, and now they're sort of the controlling party in government. And they're a Muslim Democratic Party, and have a very interesting history in terms of being in government, being out of government. Nawaz Sharif himself was exiled for many years in Saudi Arabia, but you have a Muslim Democratic political party that is now in charge of Pakistan. In addition, you have them forming coalition partners with other Islamic parties. And you have the Tehreek-e-Insaf, led by Imran Khan, which I think of as also a Muslim Democratic Party in the northern areas. And they are part of a coalition running the provincial government. So you have a new government where you have influential Islamic parties in important parts. And I think that they're in the process of putting together an agenda to really tackle Pakistan's economic sort of needs. And I think that's there's two big priorities that they're really, I think, spending a lot of time on, and that is looking at the economic agenda in Pakistan, about how you can increase institutions, how you can expand energy and in healthcare and education, and also working on counterterrorism. And I think that's a partnership they're working with the international community. How can you continue making forward leaps in working counterterrorism to bring stability to the region, which is so important with the young population and with these other extremist groups that are actively recruiting.